Hello and welcome to Think Chatbot, a series hosted by EBSend. I'm Alex and today I'm joined by Jacob. How are you, Jacob?
I'm good, thank you, Alex. I'm just enjoying the working in the kitchen and all the other fun that lockdown life brings. But other than that, I'm all well.
Very nice. In this series, we try to build a chatbot within about 45 minutes to an hour. So what are we building today, Jacob?
So today we're focusing on something which is actually due to popular demand. It's a HR holiday booking chatbot. It's HR departments at the moment, they're kind of facing a lot of admin, a lot of routine and mundane processes, and they need a way to speed it up. And you can do so with EBSend, and we're just going to see if we can do it in 45 minutes.
Very nice. All right, let's get started. Okay, cool. So in this challenge, we're going to build a holiday booking chatbot. So that's for internal HR, yes. So it's going to be for employees to log into and basically put in a request. So what should we do? Should we try to have it? How would you think that this should work? So based on people you've spoken to about this, or based on the product team's idea of this, what do people request? So like start date, end date, and then what happens?
Yeah, I suppose it's going to be just basically we're going to need a chatbot that can kind of handle along the lines of I'm off from X to Y, and we're going to basically want it to be able to then, as we said earlier, either update the HR portal or send this information off to a line manager, or in that case that you mentioned earlier, even maybe kind of portray it over to a fax or something along those lines.
A fax integration, that'd be actually quite fun. Okay, so we're going to start with I have a pretty good idea of what we're going to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from obviously a brand new chatbot install. So this platform is, actually I should give a little teaser here. We're basically, based on the idea that we have for this challenge, I'm going to use our testing version of the platform, which is essentially the version that's not currently live for all of our customers just yet, but we have sneaky access to it, which if I'm honest, between the two of us and the millions of people looking at this video, I shouldn't really be doing this. So I might get told off because essentially what I'm going to do is use features that are not yet platform ready. They're still in testing, but I just feel like they're just so nice for this challenge that it's worth using. So Jacob, if you don't tell anyone, I won't tell anyone, and I will make a pact with everyone else watching that they can't tell anyone. And if everything breaks, obviously that just means we're obviously still in the testing phase. So I'll just switch to another platform that's actually the live platform without the nice features that I'd like to use now, but it still is going to work. Okay, so pact agreed on.
Agreed on my side, and I'm sure I can see. I think there's a little message coming in through here from a few of our viewers, which is saying agreed at the moment. So one person's just put a little naughty face, but I mean we'll go with that.
We'll ignore this one. Okay, cool. So I'm on the testing the testing platform here. So what I'm going to do is we're going to create a conversation from scratch. So what I would do here to do this, the first thing that you'd like to do is basically put the bare bones of your conversations together. So what I'll do is I'll head to chats, and then conversation builder. In here, because this is a brand new account, basically it has these 10 pre-built conversations, which can be very, very useful. If you just have this new account, you don't really want to start building everything from scratch. So to help you with that, we have these conversations that are pre-built. Obviously, these are general conversations around small talk, around FAQs, around live chat, all that sort of stuff. But none of this is really valuable for what we want to achieve now, but it does mean that we can actually talk to the bot or actually build things around it. There's already a baseline there. But obviously these don't help us. So what I'm going to do is I'm create a conversation from scratch. So what should we call this conversation? Holiday, if I can type. Yeah. And then this conversation is going to help employees book holidays or time off, I suppose. We're not doing this necessarily for Christmas, are we? This is not a Christmas themed video.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose obviously like it is quite relevant for the Christmas period, but it's definitely not a season specific element here. It's always going to be relevant all year round. But it might help take off a little bit more of that extra Christmas pressure as everyone's trying to book last minute holidays.
Yeah, absolutely. So for now, we need to set up a trigger for this conversation. So as you know, triggers basically allow to, as their name implies, they're allowed to trigger a conversation. So a trigger could be anything. It could be loads of stuff. It could be a specific message, like what I'm about to do now. But if I click on this first drop down, you can see that there's loads of stuff that we can use as triggers. I like to call them events. So a trigger could be just landing on a specific URL. So if your employees use a specific page on your HR portal or on your HR internal system to book holidays, you could have this bot just live there, and whenever someone lands there, the bot could pop up and ask them what kind of dates they would like to book as time off. You can do also things if you're a bit more geeky. You can do things like API requests, so you could use integrations as events to start to trigger conversations, which is quite nice. As I scroll through, I mean, I'm not going to go through all of this because there's a lot, but there's a whole bunch of events that we could use for this. For this one, I think, what do you think we should do? Should we just do, for now, I think until it's integrated into something, we probably want to do just a message equals something specific.
Yeah, definitely. I think for this one, we'll keep it simple for the kind of first sets here. So we're just going to have message equals, and then we'll try and have a little think around the different ways that someone could be asking to book holiday, essentially. So I mean, I suppose...
Yeah.
Sorry, after you there.
Okay, so I was going to say, if you do pick a message, again, there's loads of stuff you can use here as categories of messages that you could use. So again, you could go really in depth here and have percentages and dates and times and things like that. So I don't think that any of these will really help in this particular case study or use case, because you don't really want to have. I guess you could have a trigger specific intent, but that'd be a bit more complex than what we want to achieve here. So yeah, I'm just going to keep it to equals, and I'm going to come up with a name for it, which would be book holidays. So I'm going to do this in this format for a very specific reason. So just stick around and you'll find out why I'm doing it this way. Okay, so let's save that. Perfect. So now what we've done is we've created a conversation, or at least the very start of a conversation. At the moment, it has one trigger, and the trigger is when a message is sent equals book_holiday. Make sense so far?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, this is quite nice, obviously, because you're very much used to using this kind of style of conversation builder, whereas I kind of look at it from slightly more of an outside perspective here. So it's quite nice to see everything in action and kind of see the nuts and bolts of the platform kind of all working together.
Yep.
So I'm correct in thinking here, obviously. So as we've got conversation triggered there at the top of the screen, as the arrow points down to step one, we'll be adding more steps past that and kind of expanding the conversation in almost like a linear manner there.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is what you'd call a flow conversation builder. So basically, each step has an arrow towards the next step, which basically shows the direction of the conversation. It sounds obviously super simple, and that's the purpose of it. We want to make this as simple as possible to use, and all the while providing obviously all the flexibility that the Ubeasent platform is known for. But yeah, so what we're going to do here basically is the very first message is created for us. As an example message, but as I click the plus button here, I can basically add more and more messages to this conversation, hopefully building the entire core of the conversation and making something really, really nice. So that's what we're going to do. So obviously this first message here is sent after someone has sent book holiday, which means that they already know what they're here for. So what we can do is in this first step, we can get straight into it, which is quite nice. So what would be the first step? So it would be asking holiday start date. Yeah. So we'd want to do that. I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to start adding. So this would be the end date. So I'm going to add another node here. I'm going to leave everything as blank for now because we'll go example. We'll go and edit all of that later on. So we have a start date, we have an end date, and then we'll probably want to do some sort of thank you message, or I might not call it thank you. I'm just used to doing lead generation chatbots. Booked, something like that. And then we'll put an example here as well. Okay.
Perfect. Yeah. So the names that you're giving these here, these are obviously just for internal use at the moment. Like the end user or the employee is never going to see any of this, are they?
No, so this is all for internal use, and it's a good question because the way I'm building this and the way I would recommend people build bots with our platform is by following a very linear process at the very start. So you want to build the baseline or the skeleton of your conversation early on, and then you want to go into the nuts and bolts and edit the content, edit the integrations, edit the transitions, all the things we're going to do now. But at the very start, you should basically have an idea of what your conversation should look like. Quite frequently, what we'll do is help. I mean, our clients or our customers would usually do this themselves, but if they need a little bit of help, we can do that. We would basically map out the conversation on paper almost, or in a tool like Miro or something like that, where you can really have a square, an arrow, another square, an arrow, just to map out what is your process, what is your current holiday booking process look like. Okay, well, it's first we ask them for the start date, then we ask them for the end date, then we give them the dates back for them to confirm, and then once they confirm, we say, okay, it's booked, or okay, it's been sent to your line manager. And so we put that down on paper, and this is essentially what I'm trying to do here, is putting this paper version down onto our conversation builder, just to make sure that we have the basics down, and then we'll start actually building the bot.
Yeah, I think this is as a kind of route to go down. It definitely makes a lot more sense because this way, what you're doing is essentially just matching exactly how you work currently. You're basically like you're looking at what you do right now and just basically putting it into the chatbot platform to make it a reality in conversational automation kind of style of things. But it's a lot different to say picking up kind of a pre-built template and then looking at what you're doing now and saying, okay, how do we change this to match what I've got on my screen in front of me? Because then all of a sudden, although you might have it on the screen in front of you, it kind of then is a kind of hidden workload you end up with really there, isn't there? Because you're kind of like, oh, now I need to change all of this and I need to make sure my employees follow this new process rather than how they've been doing it for however many years.
No, absolutely. And if you think of this particular process, you could think of other ways that you could use this particular approach. So I don't know, what else would you use what else would you use this approach with?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, just to clarify, the approach of booking a holiday, or just the kind of like linear kind of planning it out towards a
well, the booking aspect. So you could use this for, let's say, I don't know, booking a table at a restaurant or things like that.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. So I mean, it kind of expands hugely there. So you kind of got booking tables at restaurants, obviously, booking events, tickets for events, travel, and then from even more of a kind of say like HR, still keeping it within the HR sphere. You've also got people that you'll have, say, kind of people trying to like book company cars or book accommodation for their travels. Maybe you don't want them to be bothering other people and kind of messaging saying, oh, I'm staying here overnight. Maybe you kind of want to automate that process and just have a chatbot, gather all the information it needs, ping it off to whoever's responsible, and then it can kind of automate and smooth and streamline that process even further.
Yep, perfect. That's exactly right. Perfect. Okay, let's go and finish this conversation, or at least make a good start of it. So obviously we're asking first for a date. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to basically hit the option button here on every single node of this conversation, which is at the moment obviously doesn't say anything. And I'm going to start by editing the content. So obviously in the very first one, we're going to ask for a holiday start date. So what's the message here? So, hello, when would you like to, your time off to start? Okay. So now obviously we have a very nice message here. That's quite pretty. We can send that. We're going to use a very similar process for the next one. So great. When would you like your time off to end? Okay. So that's great. And then what's the last message? So it's all booked at the last message. We might change that later on if we feel like it. We could say, okay, great, your time off has been booked. So for now, this is obviously, I've only just changed the copy. Again, we're going through it step by step. First, create the bare bones of the conversation, the actual flow of the conversation. Then changing the copy just to make it more relatable, even just for yourself, whilst you're playing with the platform, sorry. Okay, so if we go into the demo and I send book holiday, was that the message? I forgot now.
I believe it might have been booking holiday. I think it might have been booking. No, perfect. There we go.
Okay, I could say November, what's the date today? 13th. I want to be off tomorrow. Great. November 15th, 2014.
That's quite a nice long time of holiday you got yourself planned in there. You going anywhere nice?
Yeah, a bit of time off. I just think I deserve it, you know. Okay, cool. So what I've done here is obviously nothing too exciting. I've done a trigger, which again I haven't explained yet why this is a little underscore here, but we'll go through that in a minute. And then it has a start date November 13th, and then an end date November 15th, and then just a nice message to say thank you. Okay, so nothing too exciting. What can we do to make this more exciting? Well, we can first of all add some nice date pickers. So this is this feature that I was telling about in the introduction, which is a new feature which should be going live next week. If you're watching this, that's not going to mean anything to you, but basically around middle of November 2020, we're going to release this feature, which I think is quite nice. So it's basically we can use obviously all sorts of message types in the chatbot conversation. So here I've only just used a standard message, but we can also use messages with quick replies, which basically add these nice little buttons, which could be quite pretty. We can use action buttons, which add bigger buttons around the links. We could use a general type, which has a nice image, and then a title and a subtitle, which is quite nice as well. So that makes really pretty messages. Carousels, images, videos, all that sort of stuff. A carousel is basically you can add more and more, and so you can sort of have this sliding messages or sliding images. But even more exciting than this, what we've built is basically composer types. So at the moment, I've just created a standard message that says, hello, when would you like your time off to start? So as a simple composer type, message type, this is a bit boring. What I can do is I can take this into a date type. And as soon as I save this, what it's basically going to allow me to do is, oh, I forgot the trigger again, book holiday.
That is the one indeed.
Yeah. So it's going to ask me, okay, when would you like your time off to start? And now if I click here, I basically have this really pretty date picker that I can pick. Okay, so I want my holiday to start on the 15th and send. Done. So obviously that makes the experience a lot nicer for users. One thing that's really nice is clicking buttons can sometimes be a lot easier for some people as well, rather than having to type. Another thing that's really nice for the more geeky people out there is that all of the dates are in a standardized format, which means that if I send Nov 15 2020 or 15th November 2020, or if I send 2020 11/15, like all of these things, if you're a programmer, you know very well that this is going to be very annoying because all of these different formats could mean anything. And if I go into 2020 01 05, for instance, is that the 5th of January or is that the 1st of May? You don't really know. So obviously having this date picker is actually a much nicer experience for both the user and for the platform and the eventual integrations that you're going to use later on to actually handle the data. So it's just a lot nicer. Do you agree, Jacob? It looks nice. Looks pretty.
Yeah, definitely.
Happy
I think
with that?
you're bang on the money there, really, with the kind of keeping everything uniform, essentially. Because I know, obviously, you spoke a lot from the kind of techie side of having things uniform, but I know from personal experience as well, there'll be the odd. I know there's probably the odd people at the moment that are imagining using this in kind of they'll get the chatbot to send information across the organization, and then even for an end user that just kind of gets an email with a load of information in, having it all in one uniform sense is just saves so much time at the end of the day and a lot of frustration,
Absolutely.
I believe.
Absolutely. And yeah, like you said, in terms of integrations and all that sort of stuff, forget about it. That's just going to be so much easier for you guys. Okay, so what I've done is I've done the exact same process on the second message. So now we have 2 date pickers. I'm just going to go through that just so that you can see what it looks like. Book holiday. Okay, so I can book a holiday from tomorrow, which is nice. And then when would I like my time to end? let's be more reasonable than I said earlier. I'll take a week off. All right, Jacob?
Yeah,
I'll
I
take a
think I'm
week
a
off.
bit more happy with a week than 2 years. I think I
Yeah,
said
2 years. I think I've put 2040. I think it
oh,
was
yeah,
20
20
years.
years. Oh, well, 20 years is,
Okay, that's
reasonable time.
cool. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, cool. So now I have two dates because so obviously I managed to send 2 dates, which is perfect. Okay, we're only maybe about 30% of the way there. There's a few things missing from this conversation. The very first thing that is probably missing in your head is, well, that's all nice and good, but where does this information go? In an ideal world, this information would go to the manager of whomever is talking to your bot. So if Jacob was talking to the bot, the messages would go to his manager for approval on the dates that he's picked. So what we're going to probably do, there's probably two ways of doing this. The more sensible way would be to build an integration to your HR system that you're currently using, or at least a calendar system. This is absolutely possible. You could go into the integrations part of the platform and you would go add new, and you would basically create a whole integration here. The issue of doing this is that it takes quite a lot of time. So what we might do is just go through this process with maybe an email notification to the manager, which works as well. It's quite nice. It's not quite a fax, but hopefully people will still enjoy it. Maybe next time, if we have the chance to do a part 2 of this, Jacob, we could do an actual integration into maybe Google Calendar or SuccessFactor or whatever software we can think of.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure I'll be able to kind of make a bit of space in the calendar to have a little look at a proper integration all the way through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to skip this integration, a bit too complex for just one sitting. We're going to build a conversation. We're going to make it all nice and pretty, and then part 2 we'll do an integrations, because at the end of the day, that's the cool stuff here. Okay, so within the UBSend platform, you can build emails straight from the platform, which is obviously super exciting. I've never thought that emails would be really exciting, but for some reason, I really like it. So you could send emails from the platform to whomever. So what I can do here is I can create an email from my chatbot. So let's say this is from chatbot at ubsend.io here. From the name would be from the UBSend HR chatbot. Okay. And then 2, so in this instance, we would send this to Jacob's manager at ubsend.com. And then subject, someone wants to be lazy. Okay. All right, so we can write the email. So this email will go again to the manager with a note on who's taking time off and what dates are they taking off. So hi manager, obviously. Name. So we're gonna, okay, I'm not gonna do this straight away. I'm gonna do something else. Jacob wants to take time off. These are his start and end dates. Start and make sure you tell him this isn't okay. Work. Okay. Cool. So I've created the email in here. I can save this, and now I have an email in my platform that I can use to basically send at any point during a conversation. So if I go back to the conversation that I've created earlier, what I can do is, if I go back, here we go. So what I can do is, obviously, throughout this conversation, we're asking these pieces of information, and start date, end date, and then at the very end, we just say, thanks, your time has been booked off. So what I could do here is, at the very last step, when we've collected all this information, is basically tag that email in and say, okay, now that this person has gone through this entire flow, please send an email to his manager. Okay. So obviously, you'll have noticed that I haven't put any data in this email. So that's a bit boring. What does this email actually say? Well, it doesn't say anything. It just says, oh, oops, that's not the right button. It just says, what does it say? It says time and start and end, but there's actually no data here. So what we want to do basically is start collecting the start date and end date as variables from the actual user throughout the conversation. So what we can do here is create a variable. So we're going to go into integrations, variables, and create one that is start holiday start date, close that, holiday, oops, end date. Okay, now we have two variables. So these variables will allow us to basically log the value of whatever the user is responding into these variables, and then we can use them on, again, like I said earlier, to send them to an integration, to put them into an email, etc., etc. Make sense so far, Jacob?
Yep, all making sense to me in my slightly less non-techie mind. I think that was actually a perfect time to ask me that question, because I just saw a quick question from one of our live viewers come in.
Mm-hmm.
So they're wondering if, when you're, say, sending an email here, if I'll just try and paraphrase the question here a little bit, they're wondering basically, can the emails be extended out to, say, customers? It doesn't have to be people within the specific organization. So not everybody at ubsm.com, it can, say, go out to Gmail and Hotmail addresses as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Good question. So the emails, to be a bit more, not technical, but to go a bit more in depth. So basically the from email address will always have to come from an email address on which your platform is hosted. So if you were company.com, you would have an email, your from email would always be whatever, you can come up with a name at company.com. So this part of the email address here from the from email has to be the same as this part of the email, this part of the URL that your platform is on. This is simply because the email is basically being sent from the platform. However, to answer this person's question, the to email can absolutely be anything. So it could be sending it to ubsend here in this instance, but it could be sending it to anyone external, so any Gmail addresses, and etc. But even more than that, it could be sent to variables as well. So just like I've just created a variable for the start and end date, I could create a variable called email, and then throughout the conversation, I could ask the user for their email address, log their email address into a variable, and then just use the email. Obviously, it doesn't exist here, but I could use this as the to email address, which means that to go away from an HR use case, let's say a sales chatbot use case, at some point someone could say, okay, I want to purchase X service. Okay, I'll get back to you. What's your name? What's your email address, etc. Once these people give their information, you can actually send them an email after this whole interaction and say, thank you for inquiring through our chatbot. Someone will be in touch very soon, type thing. That makes sense?
Yeah, all makes sense to me. Sounds good as well. Sounds like pretty powerful stuff you got yourself there.
Yeah, boy. Okay, so I'm going to go back to this, save this. Okay, so to catch up, we've created the email, we've created the variables, and now we're going to add these variables at the key steps of this conversation. So I'm going back into the holiday booking. So the very first step here, we ask for the start of their holiday. So what we're going to do is basically we're going to go into transition. Transitions are basically how, what does the chatbot require from the user to take them to the next step of the conversation. So that's how you can see transitions. I won't go into that too much here because it's actually quite self-evident once you start using it. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically save whatever variable, whatever information the user gives to the chatbot at this step. I'm going to save that as holiday start date. Okay, I can save that. So that's done. As you can see, there's a little lightning bolt here. What's it called? Lightning? Yeah, little lightning icon, which basically says, I'm going to save me, the chatbot, I'm going to save whatever the user says to this as a variable holiday start date. I'm going to do the same thing here. So I go back to transition and I set this up as end date. Okay, perfect. And now what I can do is I can start actually sending information that's really relevant to the users, whether that is the manager or the person actually going through the conversation, or again, an integration elsewhere, like your SuccessFactors or Google Calendars or whatever it is that you use. I can use this data to basically send it across and use it in a really malleable way. So I think I forgot to set up the variables in the actual email. So that's what we're going to do now. So we see we have the start date and the end date. So let's go and pick them up. So we have start date here and then end date here. Okay. Now, if I save this, we've got a fully functioning chatbot. This chatbot basically is going to get information from the user, to start date, end date, and then send it all across to the user's manager as an information, just sort of, Jacob wants to take this time off, is that okay? Does that make sense?
Making sense to me. I think how you phrased it then was slightly more polite than the email there. Jacob just wants to take this time off. Is that okay? A little bit different to someone wants to be lazy, tell them no. But yeah, I suppose.
Oh. Yeah, I suppose that's okay. Okay. So what else could we do here? Okay, so we could probably do some things around the conversation to make it a bit more conversational. So what could we do here? We could add a step here. Let's say, who is this person? So here what we might do is, hello, what is your name? So maybe at this step, actually, what you'd want to do initially, if you have this properly set up in your company, is you might want the first step that is authentication of the employee. So this might be done again, like I said earlier. You could have different triggers. So this might be done actually in a layer even above that, a layer abstracted above that, when Jacob logs into his HR portal and the chatbot already knows that it's Jacob. But in this instance, what we're going to do, because we can't do integrations in the short time we have, what we're going to do is we're just going to ask the person for their name, because it's just quite nice to do. So we can then create conversations around their name. So in this instance, we're going to ask for the person's name. We're going to save this as a variable like we've just done. So I can go a bit quicker on this. So I can add a variable called employee name.
I suppose with this step as well, it wouldn't just, you can go further than just name. You can have, say, employee number or reference number or anything along those lines there.
Absolutely, yeah. So again, in the transition, I'm going to save this as the employee's name, save that, close that. Okay, and so now we have the employee's name here. I can change this and say, Christ name. Oops. You again. All right. I keep clicking the wrong button. All right. Okay, so this might not be HR friendly, but this is how I'm going to build my bot.
I can tell that you're not a full member of a HR team there, as you're right.
I know. I might need a bit of training, but this is good. This is good enough. Okay, great. So here we have. Okay, your time off has been. It hasn't been booked because it hasn't been sent to something to actually verify it. It's actually just being sent to the manager. So what we're going to do is your time off has been requested just for your files. These are the days you've asked. And then we can use holiday start date and holiday end date. Today is, so we have current date. So please expect an answer in, let's say, 2 days.
That current date variable you just pulled through there, you didn't set that up during this conversation. That's a preset one that comes with the platform?
Yep, absolutely. So this is, we have a number of preset variables that are right here. So they are around, currently they're around date and times. And so you could pull, let's say the current time, you could say the current date and time, or you could just do like day of the month. So today's 12th month would be November, etc. So you could just actually also separate them if you'd like. Some companies actually quite like to do that as well. So I can pull this information straight from here. This helps me make the conversation more relevant to the person who's currently using it, which is really good for conversational, for just the UX in general. It's quite nice to do that sort of stuff. And then in this instance, this is the end of the conversation. So let's go through it. Great. So what was the trigger? Do you remember?
Oh, the toughest question there is. We really need to get better at remembering our triggers. I want to say it's book_holiday. It might be holidays though. I'm sure there's lots of the viewers right now that are sitting there.
It is book holiday. You were right the first time. All right, let's see. Great. So it's asking for my name, which obviously is Alex. And then it's using the little variable to say, Christ, Alex, you again. All right, let's book your time off. Let's book your time off to start. So obviously I want to pick a date here. Because I set this up as a date picker, I can click this and use this nice little UI to pick my start date, which I'm going to pick for the 1st of December. I can send that. Then it's going to ask me for the last day of my holiday. So I want to end my holiday on the, let's say, 15th of December. So I'll take 2 weeks off just before Christmas, which makes sense. Okay, so now it's thinking and it's sending me, okay, great, your time off has been requested just for your files. These are the days you've asked. And then it's bringing me back the 2 days that I've just selected. And it's telling me as well that today's date is the 23rd of November. So please expect an answer in 2 days about my holiday time off. So this is all working. It's all nice and done. If I were to take this a little bit further, what I would do is probably do a little bit of integrations and things like that. As we've seen before, the date picker actually makes the date format standardized, which means that if we did have an integration with anything like a calendar or a SuccessFactor, it would actually send these dates in the right format every time, which is really nice and saves a lot of the hassle. Okay, so let's review what we've done. So we've created a very simple conversation around booking time off as an employee. The conversation starts by asking me for my name or asking the employee for their name, which could be really good. If you had some sort of integration, you could actually not have to ask that at all. The chatbot might know that already, but we didn't get that far. But for now, it just asks for my name, and then it asks me for a start date and end date for my holiday, both using the nice and pretty date picker. And then at the very end, it sends me a short summary of what I've just asked and presenting me back each of the dates in a nice format. We've used as well the variables, which is quite nice. It stores any sort of data or information that I've given to the bot in a nice variable to, again, present to me at the end, like we've seen with the dates here. Again, if I were to take this a little bit further, but we obviously don't really have time, I would probably create some sort of integration with a calendar or some sort of HRMS to make this a little bit slicker, maybe not require my name or just have an auto log on or some sort of authorization at the start. I would have an integration towards the end to send my holiday request to an actual software, which would be super easy to do so with the platform as well. And then obviously I would spend a little bit of time on the actual chatbot's appearance, adding a logo, changing the colors, making sure that everything's according to the scheme of our business. So that's it. Thank you very much for joining our Think Chatbot session today. It was really a pleasure to work through this with you. Thanks, Jacob, for the great experiment here. Would you like to say goodbye?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you as well for having me on, and thank you for all of our live viewers there listening in and asking the odd question. If you are one of the people that are watching this on demand later on YouTube or maybe on our website, be sure just to head over to ubsend/drop in to join in the live audience next time, so you can kind of participate in the discussion, see what other people are asking, and ask us the odd question if you want to. But thank you again.
Definitely, or just subscribe to our YouTube channel for future videos as well. We try to bring out a lot of content out there. So if you'd like to join in or see the new things, just make sure you subscribe and you'll get access to the latest stuff. All right, thank you, everyone. Have a great day.